Welcome back to Workshop Wednesday. Today it's a Getting Started edition. We're going to talk about creating your first Data Studio report. Before we get too far into this, of course, my name is Chris Mercer. I am the co-founder of measurementmarketing.io, and maybe you heard us about podcasts and talks. Maybe you've come through some of the content we've shared on CXL Institute or Digital Marketer or Social Media Examiner or even Measure Summit. Maybe you have already become a member. I hope that you have, whether a free toolbox member or a member of measurementmarketingacademy.io, the Measurement Marketing Academy itself, I should say. Either way, however you found us, we are happy that you are here. It is our job to help people just like yourself figure out how to use all this fun stuff like analytics, like Data Studio, like Tag Manager. Of course, today we will be talking about Google Data Studio. So with that, I am going to go ahead and start the fun here. So we will obviously talk about the framework because the framework is everything when it comes to working with analytics platforms of any type. Planning is when you figure out your KIA, your question that you're trying to answer, the information that you need, the I, the Q and the I, it's question and information, then the action you will take based upon the answers you get. Then you do your build out where you're using like Tag Manager and Analytics to actually collect the information that you need so that you can answer the questions that you asked in the planning stage. Then the all important reports. Now this is where Data Studio comes in. So if you're wondering like, why should I use Data Studio? It's because it helps you immensely with reports because it focuses the information and displays it in a way that can tell a story. You in fact will see that today and how you can actually start to do that. Now, once you have those benchmarks, you can then start to forecast out what your near future is going to look like, and you can then optimize because you're finally going to know what's working and what's not, and you can make adjustments accordingly. That's how the 5 pillars actually work together. Now, with all of these workshops, of course, you want to pick just one thing. So if you're brand new to this, you might be thinking like, okay, I have to, figure out Google Data Studio, and I want to figure out sort of, if I even need this thing or what the basics are. So we're going to show you a lot here. This is a pretty full workshop, but you're going to learn lots of different things. It is easy to get overwhelmed sometimes by this, but that's where you pick just the one thing that you found that was new, that's something you can take action on that, and then come back, pick up another one new thing, etc., etc., etc. All right. With that, let's go ahead and officially get underway here. I'm going to do one little quick reset. There we go. Okay, cool. Just want to make sure I got the right slides up. Okay, this is it. You ready? Getting started, creating your first Data Studio report. Now, normally, this is where I just jump right in, but actually, we have special guest instructor, Julie Brade. She's a lead instructor over at measurementmarketing.io, and she's been doing this for a while. Julie and I were just talking about how long she's been with us as a company for many, many years, but she's been really teaching clients and whether it's private guided training, easy for me to say, private guided training clients that we've had. She is one of the lead instructors that's back there answering all the Ask Instructor support questions that come back there. She's an account manager for our dedicated measurement managing clients, where she works with other certified measurement marketers, and an absolute Data Studio rock star when it comes to using this stuff, especially on helping beginners get up and running and get power from this platform. So she's learned a lot. She learned from scratch just like you're about to. So she's going to give you some of the tools, techniques, and tips that she's found to help you get started and really get something incredibly useful from Google Data Studio. So with that, Julie, I'm going to go ahead and let you share your screens. And again, thank you very much. You're an absolute rock star at this, and it's time to demonstrate some of those skills. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in, let you share screens, and take it away.
Thank you very much for that awesome introduction, Mercer. So excited to be here to show everyone how to create their first dashboard in Google Data Studio. So this is our demo dashboard that we have back there in one of our free tools for our Toolbox members and for our Academy members. And so we're not going to be creating something so much like this or a little bit more advanced like this one right here, but we will focus today on something a little bit more simple with our toolbox funnel, and we're going to create something very similar to this with our own little flair on it. So let's go ahead and get started. So when we first come into Data Studio, if you've never been to the platform, you're going to want to go to datastudio.google.com, and it'll probably redirect you to this overview page. You'll just then click over here to the nav of home, and it's going to bring this stuff up. So over here you have all these different template galleries. You can take a peek at those, but today we're going to focus on creating a brand new report. So we're going to create a blank report, and we're going to follow the prompts of what it's asking. As with any new platform, we're just going to follow along and accept and all these other different things that it's going to ask us to do. And since this is a demo account, we've never connected with it, and I did that intentionally so we can kind of see what everything's new, and we'll go through all this. So let's see here. We are in the United States. There we are, and I'm going to put measurement marketing.io, and we're going to agree, and we're going to continue. Sure, we're going to want tips. I always enjoy having tips. I guess I should have clicked yes to all. That's fine. All right, now it says, thanks, please continue with your previous action. So I'm going to click that now. And we're going to go through, and here is the next prompt. And this might seem you're not sure exactly what to do. You just want to create a dashboard, but this is asking you to basically connect to your data. And right here, the naming is a little bit different. So we call, in here we call them connectors, but in Data Studio, we call them data sources. So you'll see that in just a moment. So for this, I'm not going to go into deep dive into data sources. We have courses that do that. But for this workshop, we're going to just kind of high level, we're going to connect into Google Analytics. And again, we're going to have to follow some prompts, just like you do with any sort of platform. So we're going to authorize, and it's going to pop some things up, and then we're going to choose our account. And one quick note here is really important to know is, I'm in this demo account. If I were in my regular account, every account that I have access to would be popping up here right now. So if you're an agency or if you happen to have multiple accounts, that is where you would see those. And then I'm going to click into our account. And again, if you have access to all of the properties, you would see them here. If you only have access to one, then you would only see the one. So pretty straightforward there. I'm going to choose this because that's what I know I need to choose. And then I'm going to choose this one right here because that's where I have the information that I want. And so I'm going to take a sidebar here and say, if you don't have your information in Google Analytics organized and formatted in a way that's going to be easy to read, you can definitely watch this workshop so you can kind of see where you're going and how beneficial it is going to be to have your data organized. But then go back and follow some of our workshops or go through some of our courses that Mercer will tell you about here in a moment that will help you get there because it's only going to be more useful for you. So we're going to choose our different account property view. We're going to add, and it's probably going to give us some more prompts again. Ooh, we didn't see. There it is. So you can say, don't show me this again. I personally have not on my other account because I use it for teaching purposes. But for this one, I'm going to say, don't show me this again. And I'm going to add it to the report. All right, so by default, it's throwing this up here. I'm not exactly sure why, because this is not very useful information. And as you've seen in our previous workshops, we talk about dashboards that need to be useful and actionable. So we want to make sure we follow those rules as well. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this for now, and we'll come back to some more graphics in just a moment. But as we're going through, here is our menu bar. As with many design type tools, here's our toolbar. And once we start getting into actually adding elements, we are going to talk about other spots that are going to be just easy to know, so you can navigate better is a better way of saying it. So when you're talking to us and asking instructor support or anything, you're like, I have a question here. It would be easier to know exactly where everything's at. So let's add our first element, and that's what everything is called. And so we have all these different charts, but each one of these is going to be called an element. And we're going to start with one of the simplest called a scorecard. And that's what we have here. And I'm actually going to take a step back real quick, and I'm going to add this just so you can see visually what I'm about to say. And it kind of goes back to that planning step. And when we plan, we want to make sure that our dashboards are actionable and useful, as we've been saying. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that we're not just dumping data in here for data's sake, kind of like what that first chart was doing, and what this is going to do until we change it. And I'm going to address the questions that we have for this dashboard that we're creating, and that way we can make sure we stay on target and make sure this is useful and actionable. And you'll want to make sure you follow these steps as well. Again, go back and watch the other workshop that talks about planning, and I would highly recommend doing the planning step first. It's just, you're going to end up chasing your tail, as so to speak, and redoing a lot of work if you don't. So first thing we want to know is how is our toolbox funnel converting? That's our first question. Then we want to know where is traffic coming from? And then how do they convert? Next question is, how do different devices convert? Because you might have a high conversion rate on desktop, but a really low conversion rate on mobile. And then maybe we have a question of, where do users start? Meaning, like, what's their landing page? So that might be another great question that you would have. And finally is, maybe you want to see how is the funnel trending? And so one thing we mentioned in the planning workshop is making sure you're building the dashboard for whoever it is. So if these questions aren't the type of questions that you would need, that's okay. This is for this particular workshop, but go through and think about whoever the dashboard is for and build the dashboard for them. So I'm going to keep this list here so we can reference it. And so we're going to tackle this first one. How is our funnel converting? How's our toolbox funnel converting? And so what I have is our scorecard here. And then I'm going to change it, instead of new users, which is only people that are first coming to our site, not anyone who may have been there previously, which is not what we want. So we want to choose users, because that is a more useful truth. And there we go. So we have users here. And then, because I want to see users on a very particular page, I'm going to utilize this part right here. It's a filter. In order to do that, I need to know which page I want to filter. So I'm going to come into our site and go and find that page first. So this is the one that I want to know about, is the toolbox. So I'm going to come in here and just highlight all of this. I'm actually going to highlight not the HTTPS. All right, so we have our users, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say filter, and I'm going to add a filter, and it's very straightforward. I'm going to actually name this one is toolbox offer page, and I'm going to include when a page, and if you're familiar with Google Analytics, it's exactly very similar to what you would do if you're building a segment or trying to find information in Google Analytics. So very, very similar to the platform. So you're just naming conventions, everything. So you're literally pulling the data from Google Analytics and just displaying it in a useful way. So we're including a page that contains, and then we're going to paste this. And the reason I didn't grab this HTTPS is because that information is not in Google Analytics. So if I were to keep that HTTPS, this number would change to 0 because it doesn't exist in Google Analytics, and we can only get information out what Google Analytics has. So we're going to go ahead and save. So now we've created our filter that says only this page, and we're only looking at users. So we're not looking at page views or sessions, because again, users is a more useful truth. And I'm going to do something real quick with the formatting while I'm here. I'm going to come over to the Style tab. So we have our Data tab here, and we have our Style tab here, and I'll get more into detail in just a moment with those. But for this user, we have different sections that you can do, and we have conditional forming. There's another workshop on how to change this color, and so you can definitely watch that too. So we have, this is what I like to do. I like things being symmetrical, so I like things being in the center. That's just my preference. And then I'm going to change the background color, so it's going to help it stand out a little bit more. I'm going to change it to a dark, no, let's not do that. Let's do a light gray. And then I'm going to round the edges just because it's going to make it look a little bit neater on there. And so far, that's what we're going to have for now. And then the last thing that I'm going to do with this little element is I'm going to come in here with our users and click on this pencil. So we have our metric. We're going to click on the pencil and we're going to say toolbox offer page. And that's all we're going to do. We don't even have to, there's no save or anything, and you can already see it's changing. And we're going to click off of that. And because this name is a little bit too big, I'm going to make this a little bit wider. And there we go. So we have our very first element. So I want to back out real quick to show you the other. So we now have this step here. And we are going to get ready for the next one. And I'm actually going to pull this guy up a little bit because we're not going to take up that much space. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select this and copy, then paste it. So Control C, Control V, Command C, Command V, however you want to do it. And then instead of having it for this toolbox offer page, I want to go ahead and get rid of this filter because that's not what we're looking for. And then we are going to change it back to users. I could have just changed the name, but I'm just going to faster just to click on this, and now it changes it back to users. So now we have the toolbox offer page and then all the users that this view has. What we want to see to make it match what we have here are the people that opt in. And so we, like that could be, we could add another filter for the thank you page, or we can utilize what we already have built into Google Analytics, which is a goal. And so we're going to type in over here. So we have our, again, we have our data tab, and then we're going to walk through this real quick so you can see all the different parts and pieces. Our data source is right here. So remember we talked about our data source is where the data is coming from. Before it was kind of called a connector, but now this is our actual data source. The connector would be like Google Analytics, and the data source is this very particular view. And then so we have our metric, which is our users, and in some other charts you'll see dimensions or metrics, which again is all Google Analytics language. And then we come into our date range, which we'll get to that in just a moment. We'll be able to add some date ranges in there. And then we already talked about a filter, and then segments, which is a little bit more advanced, but very useful. And then over here in this section is all the fields that you're able to use. So we're going to actually come up to the very top, and I'm going to put in, because I know the name of the goal, I'm going to put in toolbox. Now, if you know the name of your goal, you'd be able to search for it the same way. That's where the naming conventions kind of come in handy. So one unfortunate thing is that we can't see the whole name, so it's hard to see. I just happen to know the third one is always the completion. So I want to hover for a second so it pops up. Hopefully it will. There it is, completion. So completions is the one that we're looking for when we're trying to say like, well, how many people did this? There's other ones that are abandonment rate or conversion rate, but completions is the one we want. And so we're going to grab this and we're just going to drag it over. I could also, there's 3 places you can do it. You can also grab it and change it here as well. So there's lots of different ways to change this. And we go in more depth in exactly how to do that in our courses and back there for our Academy members. So I want to not go so far into depth with that one. Now we have our toolbox offer page, and then we have toolbox. So and this name is a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and change this to toolbox opt-ins. And now that name is done. So now we have our offer page, we have our opt-ins, our toolbox offer page, our toolbox opt-ins. Now we want to get our conversion rate here. So let's go ahead and do that. And that is actually something called blending data, and you'll see that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this one first, and then I'm going to select the second one. You could technically drag it over and do that as well. And then I'm going to right click, and at the very bottom there's one called blend data, and you'll see exactly what that does. It's going to bring them together. And that number is not what we were expecting. That is a really crazy number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that. And the reason it did that is because of the order that we selected them in. What we want to do is grab this one first and then the other one second, and then blend them again. Well, I guess it's making a liar out of me. I'm going to try this one more time because we're going to do this live, because maybe it's because I'm dragging and dropping and that's new and it doesn't like me doing that. There we go. So don't drag and drop. Don't follow that advice anymore. So now we have to very specifically select the numerator in the first and the denominator second. And so there we go. Very similar to how you do any sort of math for that one. So instead of having this super long name, we're going to go over here and say toolbox CR% to keep that name really short. And then I'm just going to apply. And it's going to come off. So now we have our toolbox offer page, we have our toolbox opt-ins, and we have our toolbox conversion rate. Again, we have another workshop that talks about how to make this different colors and all of that stuff. And so I'm not going to go into that into detail today either. But we're going to continue on and build our dashboard. So the next thing that we can do to make sure we have a very awesome funnel is to go ahead and make a line. So remember, we have our toolbar here, and we have all these different options, and one of them is a line, and we're going to use the one with an arrow, and we're going to carefully hover till we see our purple dots, or diamonds, technically purple diamonds, and we're going to drag and go down. And then of course you have all your different formatting options here, but today we're just going to keep it nice and simple. And we can then put in our conversion rate here. And what I like to do is I'm going to put another shape behind this, because it's going to pull it all together. Because as we start adding more and more elements, it's going to be harder to see exactly, it's just going to make it look better. So I'm going to send this to back, and what I'm doing is I'm right clicking. I'll show that again. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to order send to back, so that way everything's on top of it. And in the color, I'm going to make it a blue. Wow, that is really bright. We're going to make it a dark blue. So purpley blue. And then I'm also going to go ahead and round the corners. We realize that having rounded corners just make dashboards look a lot better. So I'm going to select all of this and bring this down a little bit. And what I'm going to do next is make this a little bit bigger, because what I'm going to do is add in a text block that is going to tell us what is happening, like what is happening here. So the user that's going to use this dashboard is really going to understand what they're seeing. Is, you know, you could put it in the form of a question. How is how is the toolbox offer converting? And you could, or you can just form it in, like say, you know, toolbox funnel, whatever it is that makes sense for you and whoever is going to be using the end report. Because if they have lots of different reports to view, maybe keeping it super simple and very clear would be helpful for them. All right, so there we go. We have our very first section, and I'm going to pull it over here to the side. One pro tip is always leave white edges. It makes it for a much cleaner look for the dashboard. So we have our very first question. The next question I'm actually going to skip for now, because I like this third one. So I think it's a fun one to do. We're going to come back up here to add a chart, because we want to know what devices people are using, and the fun way to do that is with a pie chart. And so we're going to go ahead and add our pie chart here. And if you can see my screen with these red lines, those are our guidelines for our formatting. And they're super helpful for someone like me who likes to have things aligned up and nice and neat. And I'm going to go ahead and utilize those lines as well, keep it nice and straight. So if you see this, like, what does that mean? It actually went back to the last data source that we created. So remember when we blended our data, it created a new data source. And so that's not the one we wanted to use. And so again, I'm not going to go into too far of what all that means. We're just creating our first dashboard, and you're not going to break anything or hurt anything by not understanding what exactly that means. But if you need to know more, definitely hit us up and ask an instructor support, and go through our different courses that we have back there that go into this into much, much more detail. So I just got rid of the data source here, and as you can see, it's like, hey, what happened? But we're going to go ahead and click on this little section again, and then we're going to see here's our data source that we were using before, and it's going to kind of go back to the default metrics and dimensions that it uses. Remember, dimensions and metrics, all that stuff is coming from Google Analytics. So the dimension that we want here is going to be device category. And instead of new users, again, we're going to switch it to users. And fun tip, we're going to go down here. Love this section right here. We're going to choose apply filter. And then we're going to go to view. And what this apply filter thing does is I can now choose mobile, and these numbers are changing for mobile. I can choose desktop. These numbers are changing for desktop. And that is the beauty of being able to add that last little checkbox. I'm going to show you again. It's not named very well, but it's under interactions. Apply filter is what it is, and that's what that checkbox just did. If that checkbox is not checked, then you won't be able to click on anything and apply the filter to those. All right. So we have our first question, we have our second question answered, or we have them visible, so whoever's using the dashboard will be able to take action on those. And then we can say, let's find out where traffic is coming from and how do they convert. And then let's go ahead and figure that out. So I like to show the traffic into a table, but you can definitely try bars or a time series or anything like that. If you want to get more familiar with Data Studio, the best way to do it is just diving in and playing with everything that you can play with here. For this workshop, we're going to use a table, and again, I'm using my guidelines to kind of show me where I want to go, and again, it's going to use the last information that I just used. Use the data source, use device category, use user. It's not really what I want, so I'm going to choose source for here. And again, I'm just clicking in here and I'm just searching for it and just making it nice and easy to do that. So source. And so remember, this was one way to grab the information. The other way that we did it a while ago was using this search box here. The third way that you can find this information is actually to scroll all the way through and find what you're looking for, which isn't the fun way. So just you have to figure out which way you're the most comfortable with. So now we have our source of in the users. Again, it's all users on all the pages, so not necessarily toolbox. So in order to find out, there could be two different questions that you have. Maybe you want to know the users that see that toolbox offer page, and that way we can just add our filter. So let's go ahead and do that. Clicking on filter, and we're going to add that filter that we have here. We're adding it to this table, and to make things clear, I'm going to name this user the same thing that we have here to make sure that whoever's using this dashboard knows that they're the exact same thing. So I'm going to call it Toolbox Offer Page. And there we go. So now we're very clear with that. I'm going to go down to the bottom and check that same box we just did, apply filter, and we're going to go ahead and view. And guess what this is going to do? Now you get to see what Infusionsoft is doing versus other traffic sources, and it's going to change our conversion rate for that versus what's happening with Google. What's happening with that? So Google apparently is converting at a higher rate. Very cool. So now we're going to go back into our edit mode. If you haven't seen me click back on that. And then we're going to copy this one more time. I'm going to press Control-C and Control-V. And what we're going to do with this, I'm actually going to make this a little bit narrower. If you see what I'm doing, I'm just kind of, it's almost instinctual to make these things nice and clean lines. That's just another pro tip. Don't just throw a bunch of things out in here and hope it makes sense. So we have our source here. We're going to change this next one to medium. And again, we're just clicking in here and I'm searching in the box. And medium. There we go. And again, we're using Toolbox offer page. And since we copied it, we also have this apply filter. And now I'm going to again click on our view mode because that's where our interactions will all work. So now we can say, what is desktop doing for, I'm going to choose Google Organic. We're going to give it a moment to think. Google Organic. And that way you have a dashboard that's going to be able to answer all of those different questions. Now we're going to go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. Actually, I want to keep this here. So what we're going to show you now is if you click anywhere where you're not on an element, so right here I'm on an element, and then if I click off, I'm not on an element, and these two different options pull up. So theme is really important. That's where you can come in here and adjust to having your particular branded colors. And I'm actually going to pop out of this and I'm going to show you inside our demo dashboard because just that makes a little bit more sense when you see all the different colors. So I'm going to click on our theme and I click customize, and I want to scroll down here and you can see we chose these colors. And we chose very specific things for that. And that way you can do the exact same thing with yours. We're not going to have time to do that in this particular workshop, but just want to let you know that it's there. The other part is layout. And so you have navigation options here. I'm not going to go into depth with those, but what you can do is this is your canvas size. So we have our width, which obviously is our left to right, and then our height, top to bottom. And so I'm going to make this, I'm going to make it 1500 just so it's a little bit longer. And then I'm going to drag this down. So now if you want to add more space, you know how to do that. All right, so our next question is, where do users start? And in Google Analytics language, that means what is their landing page? And so again, we're going to add a chart just because that's an easy way to see this data, but you are more than welcome to do it any other way that you want to. And so I'm going to drag this over, again, using my guidelines. And you can come in here and adjust the width of these columns as well. And instead of, actually, I'm going to keep this goal because I think that's very useful. And then I'm going to, instead of device category, we're going to go ahead and change to, actually, that's not where I want to click. I want to click on the words device category and say landing page. Again, this is Google Analytics saying this is the first page of their session. So this would be helpful to know, like, are they coming from a blog? Are they coming from, they start on the home page, which that's what a lot of our users do. Or are they starting directly on this particular page? So that's why we know that. All right, this particular one, I'm going to go ahead and change this name because we're going to change it back to Toolbox Opt-ins just for consistency, because this number is the same thing as this number, and we want to make sure that it's very clear to whoever's using this dashboard. So, and again, we can make sure we add that where it defaulted us into the style tab. That's not where I want. I want to go to the data tab to scroll down to the bottom and add that filter. Apply that filter, I should say. That way I can click on, or whoever's using the dashboard can click on these different landing pages to know. And we're actually going to do that. We're going to go back into our view mode, and I want to click on measuremarketing.io, our home page, and to find out, well, what traffic's doing that? Of course, it's Google Organic and Direct None, which that means people are searching for the name or just happen to know the name, and they go there. So that is what's happening there. Who are the people that are going directly to this page? My guess is affiliate traffic or email. And there you go. So that is how that stuff is working. So we now have, let's go back to our demo dashboard and we're going to see how far we've made it. So we have our funnel. We have our device, or excuse me, our source medium. We have it a little bit different way. We're not showing the opt-in because that's a little bit more advanced, but you do have your funnel that changes with opt-in, so it's just as useful. And then we have our device category, and we added in our landing page, and now we're going to go ahead and do something with trending. And in case you're wondering, we do show in our courses of how to do the blended data with tables, and so you would be able to do that. And if you're in our member site as an Academy member and have that question, you can just ask us and ask an instructor support, and we can definitely guide you through that. We'll send videos back and forth to make sure that you are showing exactly what you want to be showing for your dashboard. So just a side note there. We're going to go back into our edit mode again because we want to be able to add some more, and we can't do that unless we're in our edit mode. I want to make this guy go down a little bit more, and then we're going to go ahead. I'm actually going to do a little bit of formatting here because this bothers me. We're going to make this guy line up with the device category, and I'm going to select both of these at the same time, and we're going to drag them down. Again, using my guidelines, you could see that number 364 popping up next to that toolbox conversion rate. That's just saying, hey, these two are basically the same height. Good job. So that's how we are making sure that there's nice and clean lines. I can also select this, and I select this to see what their difference is. And then I see that the device category is a little bit shorter, so I'm going to select it again, and I'm going to very slowly move it, and now we can see they're lined up and they're the same. So now I'm going to let it go, and now, well, that didn't work the way I wanted it to. Let's try that again. Now they're lined up. Oh, it's because it's too, that's why. It was slightly smidged to be below, but it was the same height. All right, so now we have our main elements, and we just want to add trending. And so to add trending, we're going to again come up here to add a chart, and we're going to go ahead and do a time series chart, which is basically dates. So think of that as dates. And again, we're going to use our red guidelines to tell us where to go. This guy is going to come down, and I'm going to make this guy go all the way across. And this is where we can, again, add in our toolbox goal of completions. And I can't click on it and it adds it to it. I have to click and drag it to there. And I don't want users on there as well. That's not going to be very useful. So now we have the toolbox completions, but I'm going to change that again to toolbox opt-ins. And there we go. Again, we're going to come down here to apply filter, and we can now view, and we're going to see what apply filter means in time series. So this is interesting. We have a big spike here. So what I'm going to do is I'm literally dragging and dropping this to select this date. I click, hold down, and drag it to there, and now it's showing me only what happened on that date. And so I now well, what happened here? So apparently this webinar happened, and we got a bunch of opt-ins for that. And then I can obviously see the different device categories and all of that. So that is how you can use the apply filter in your time series. So we're going to go back now into our edit mode because we got a few more things we want to do here. And that is we want to add some control. And that is going to be by adding in a date range control. I'm going to just select and add it here. Usually top right is where we find it. Sometimes just usually in the top somewhere. It's just so it's really clear and easy to find. As I'm building a dashboard, I always choose the last 7 days when I'm building it, because if I choose something that's like the last 2 months or this last quarter or something a little bit bigger date range, it's harder to see if something's off. Like if I knew for a fact that we had 100 conversions or 100 opt-ins, I would know, okay, something's wrong with my logic here. What happened? And that way it would cue me in a lot faster than if I had a big date range. So that's just a pro tip there for you. Next, we're going to go over to our style tab for this one, and we're going to make it into just change the color just so it's a little bit more obvious to see. I know these colors don't go very good together, but we're not going to change our theme in this particular workshop. So, and I also rounded the edges again because it just makes it for a nice cleaner look. So now we have our date range control. The next controls that we want to add that we can do is not our data control. We're going to do a drop-down list, and we're going to just add them across. And by default, source and users. Perfect. That is exactly what we wanted. And again, I'm going to change the color here. I'm going to choose something different than the colors that we already have going on here. And in order to change the color, we're going to go back down here to background and border. We're going to make this an orange. We're going to, because that, I don't know if that black is going to be hard to see. We'll find out. I'm going to see what white looks like. So we're going to change our text color to white. That looks a little bit easier to see. So we'll keep that one. And I'm going to show this without rounded edges so you can just kind of see the difference of why we choose to do rounded edges. And so now I'm going to select this and I'm going to paste it. And we're going to do, instead of source, we're going to choose medium now. There we are. We now have medium. And the reason I'm copying and pasting is because it saves me all those steps of having to do the formatting for each and every single one. So that makes it just go faster. And so for this third one, we're going to do campaign. So we have our source, medium, and campaign. So remember that question of how is our traffic performing, and where's our question at? Where's the traffic coming from and how do they convert? This is another way to get that answer. And I'm actually going to show you one more trick. I didn't plan on showing you this trick, but what I'm going to do is line up this last one with the side of this. And this first one is lined up with this side, but I want this medium to be in the middle. So I'm going to select all three of these, and then I'm going to right click, say distribute horizontally. That means it's distributing across. So wherever this is your ending point, this is your starting point. And so if I had 5 of these, it would distribute all 5 of them. And so they're all balanced and they have symmetry. That's beautiful symmetry, right? Okay, so now one last thing before we go is that we want to be able to have these same text headlines above. And so I'm going to pull this down just a hair for this, and I'm going to go ahead and copy this block, and we're going to start putting them behind. And we're going to say order send to back. And clearly these guys need to have a different color in the background. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to do this to all of them at the same time. And I'm actually going to click off of them, and you're going to see what I do here. So I'm going to select this landing page, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say select tables on this page. That way all the elements that are tables are going to format at the same time, which is super useful. So what we're going to do is going to go over to our style menu. And what if I don't like this gray thing up at the top? I'm going to change that to, we're going to change it to hot pink. And then I can then change it, the odd row color or the even row color here. And that's where those grays come in handy. And so there we are. So that's where the grays come in handy there. So that way it's a little bit easier to see what those numbers mean. And I apologize for the crazy bright colors. I know. There we go. I'm making this so we have blue on both sides. And I know it's not perfect, but we're running out of time here. And so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this text block. And again, we're going to just add in to guide our user what's happening here. Is so we can say, basically, what was our question here? Where's traffic coming from? Where is traffic coming from? And then we're going to do the exact same thing for these other 3 items. And we're going to cue a quick time lapse here. Just kidding, it's a live workshop. We can't do that. So we're going to go ahead and do this together. We're going to grab this color. I'm going to go a little bit faster because I think you got the idea of what we're doing here, but I want you to see the end result. So I'm dragging this blue rectangle down, and I'm right clicking, and I'm going to order send to back. And now I'm going to kind of change this so again we have that little blue visible, and this rectangle doesn't have to be as big. Actually, I take that back. We're going to go ahead and make you all the way down because there might be a day in a date range where there's plenty of landing pages. I'm then going to copy this text block, bring it down. Oops, that was the wrong one. Thank goodness for undo, right? So now I'm going to use my arrow instead of my mouse because that didn't work very good. And then I'm going to bring this guy back up to where it can be there. And then so, you know, instead of where's traffic coming from, where is traffic starting? Or let's actually change this to what page do users start? What page do users start on? And then we have our, ooh, that one is a lot bigger. We're going to bring this all down. There we are. And so then we have our device category. I'm making this whole thing bigger, and I'm going to do the same thing we did with the other ones. And instead of having the device, the legend on the right side, I like having it below or on top because it makes it a whole lot bigger and easier to use. And then we're going to go ahead and make the same color the background, which I think was this one. There we are. And then what we could do is pull this down and then create another. We're actually going to go ahead and do that. We're going to show you how to do that. I'm copying and pasting this name here, this text block, and having it line up with everything. And what we're going to do is change the background, because right now I'm selected on the text block. We're going to change the background color to the same color we've been using, and I'm going to right click carefully and say order send to back so it didn't cover up the legend, and say what device are users on. I sometimes say users using, but that doesn't come across very clear. So now we have all of those. We have one more to do, guys. All right, so we're going to select our, try and get to the blue box, bluey purple box, and we're going to do that. We're going to drag it all the way across. We're going to have our name. We're going to copy and paste our text block to be our name, our guidance here, and then we're going to say how are opt-ins trending over time? Over time, in this case, I guess would be 2 words. And then we're going to send this to back again. And we're going to, I'm going to go ahead and delete our questions now because we don't need them. And then what we can do for this formatting, since we have such a dark color, we can go ahead and make this background more of a gray color as well. Or, yeah, because it's going to change our line. So we're going to make it a dark gray, which I would actually honestly never use this dark of colors, but I just want to make it really visible what's happening because I didn't think that all the grays that if I could choose would come across. And so if I actually decided like, ooh, I don't like this blue color, it's too much, we can use the same trick we did before. So selecting it and select all the rectangles on this page and say, nope, we don't want to do that. We want to do a light gray. And then, so obviously some of our white, and so now we could do select all of our text blocks on here and say instead of white, let's do black. So this one was the only one that wasn't a rectangle. So I'm going to change these guys real quick. I don't remember which gray we used. That hopefully was the same one. And we're going to do that one more time here. I think you guys are getting the gist of how to do this. Super cool. I'm trying to figure out which gray I'm using. All of these I should pay. There we are. Okay, very cool. So now if I wanted this to go back to where it was before, like how it was, I'm going to go back to style and I'm going to say reset to report theme. So it's here. So it's still not as exactly what I want it to be, but I can do something else with the grid lines. I can make the grid lines black. Excuse me, let's try this one. There we are. And so I can basically make it look like it's just sitting on top of this rectangle. So I want to show you in the view mode. Now we officially have a dashboard. Clearly we would put a name up here with our header and we'd put our logo. Ooh, I got one more thing to change. I see this. This is what we also forgot to do. We're going to right click and select scorecards on the page. And let's make these guys our weird purpley blue color. I don't like that. We're going to make them this yellow. That looks better. All right. And one final thing, again, we said our header, we're going to say this is our toolbox funnel. And we're going to select it. We're going to make it center. We're going to go ahead and make it big text. And then we're also going to go ahead and add an image here. That will be our logo. And so we're going to upload from a computer and add that image in. And so once we have that, I'm going to drag that guy over here. And then if we ever needed to change it out, you just select this and upload a different image or add another image too. So let's go back into our view mode and see everything that we have done. So we have our toolbox funnel, and we can change our different date ranges. If we want to go all the way back to January 1st, we can, or we can choose, I want to see the last 30 days and apply. And we can use our drop-down boxes to very quickly say, I only want to see Infusionsoft. And it's going to change, and it's going to work within here. And then I can say, then I can select all of these guys again. That works. And obviously our toolbox conversion rate is going to flow through. It's going to work with whatever we're selecting or not selecting. And we've already seen all of these tables in the device category, the pie chart in action, our time series in action. So now you have a very useful and actionable dashboard. You know, you're able to see with the conversation that we're having here. Where, what page do users start on? Where is traffic coming from? How is it converting? What devices are they on? You know, how are opt-ins trending over time? And then obviously whatever questions that you might have in addition to this, you would just add them on and then choose whatever element or visual that you would like to do that would relay that information in a useful way to whoever is using that end report. So I want to let Mercer take it back. And if you guys have any questions, just let us know. We're always happy to help. Oh, one last thing I forgot to mention. So we do want to go ahead and name our dashboard, and that's just when we go into our edit mode. You know, we can just say demo or whatever we're going to call it here. And then you can also have your share options. So you can add whoever you need to add to. You can say if they can view or edit and all that stuff. That's really important for sharing it with your different team members and stuff. So now Mercer can take it back, and hope you guys enjoyed creating your very first useful and actionable dashboard.
All right, that was actually amazing. I'm going to go ahead and take back the share here. So, wow, there was a lot that was covered there. What was your one thing through all of this? I mean, normally when I actually set up Julie, when I asked Julie, I said, hey, you know, let's do like kind of a creating the first data studio report. And then she was telling me what she was kind of planning out, and then I get to see it, which was just awesome. This was so much bigger than I thought it was going to be. So this was more of like creating. In fact, as Julie was doing her thing, I'm like changing slides in the background here because I think it's creating a complete Data Studio report. It was everything that you're going to touch, different parts and pieces of Data Studio. So some of you, maybe the one thing is like, okay, this is just what's possible. I don't know how to do this yet, but I know enough to kind of know that it's possible. Others maybe learned a thing or two to take your skills to the next level of where they currently are. And others are like, okay, now I can get started. And I've got some basic ideas of how to, you know, get a data source connected and using connectors can get things underway. Wherever you are, it's all about taking that one thing and taking action. Now, speaking of action, next week's edition of Workshop Wednesday is a Beyond Basics edition. We're going to be talking about setting up e-commerce in Google Analytics 4. So if you are using Google Analytics 4 and you have not yet set up e-commerce, we're going to talk about doing that. And I look forward to that workshop. Of course, if you want this workshop, just subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. It'll be sure to alert you. Also, by the way, likes and comments. Julie likes seeing those. I love seeing those. So if you have any feedback on that stuff, would love to see those, including this video. So always a good thing. The other way to get our workshops is in the Measurement Marketing Toolbox. Now I'm going to point this out for a couple of reasons here. The workshops, which is Workshop Wednesday, that's all in there. So you have the current workshop always going to be there. And of course you've got the YouTube channel, but it's just, better sometimes if you have it all set up in the workshop. The real key to the toolbox, though, is the actual toolbox itself. I'm going to show that to you here. So as you come into the toolbox, what it does, you just click on this little area. Now, when you come in, you're going to have some of this lit up. That's what a toolbox member sees. You can see the most current workshop, and then you can see the toolbox itself. The toolbox itself is all these different resources. The one I want you to pay attention to from this workshop is the dashboard toolkit. So very often we get people that say, "Hey, I want to actually have access to the dashboard. Like, how do I get an access to the template that you guys are using or what you showed?" This is where it is. So you click on dashboard toolkit, and then it'll take you in there. So just make sure you take a look at that. And that's free, by the way, completely free. So anybody that wants to do that, if you're not yet a Toolbox member, to go measure.tips/WW. It's just our way of giving back to the community, helping get people started and give them at least something to get underway. Now, that said, what we would expect is what happened with me in particular. I start with free stuff, and eventually I start paying for stuff, right? And I was imagine as you get into this and you go, yeah, I need to pick up a course on Data Studio, whether it's the basics or maybe beyond basics stuff you got to learn. Maybe it's Tag Manager, maybe it's analytics skills you need to pick up a little bit. Maybe it's something else. We've got courses on funnel tracking, etc. Measure.tips/getacademy, and I'm going to show that to you here. So in the courses, I'm going to pull up the courses. And I'll pull up Ask Instructor Support. It's my two favorite things that are back here. So in the courses themselves, we do new courses all the time. A couple of questions I get about the courses. How often are they updated? Pretty often. You can see the Google Analytics setup was just updated in February 2021. Tag Manager Basics was updated January. We just are finishing Google Sheets Basics, which is the one for just helping people get the beginning basics skills for spreadsheets if you don't have that down. In April, we're going to be redoing Tag Manager Basics and having that come back out. Sorry, Tag Manager Beyond Basics, I should say, is going to be the one that's coming up in April. So lots of cool stuff that's coming down. You can see all the different courses that we have here, even broken down by topic. So here's your analytics topics. Here's your Tag Manager topics. They kind of follow the same formula, the basics, the beyond basic stuff, and then some specialized components for the platforms. And of course, dashboards and reporting, whether it's Google Sheets, funnel tracking, Data Studio, beyond basics, when you know your numbers, what numbers are important to measure and why, how to do traffic attribution or think through it, even things like retention and cost per acquisition. So lots of cool things that are back here. And then, of course, strategy. So how to think about stuff is really important, whether it's coming up with, understanding kind of where you are in your own journey, how to actually build a plan, how to build an optimization plan, how to forecast revenue and results. There's lots of cool things that are back here as well. So all the different courses in the Measurement Marketing Academy. There are also on-demand workshops. This is, of course, the workshop what you would always have access to up here. But as an Academy member, these are all lit up. So we take our workshops, we edit them down so you don't have to watch stuff like this. And they are, Zoom effects and everything else. We call them student editions. So they're very focused workshops where you can come in and get caught up on different stuff. And again, the different topics, the what's new editions, the getting started stuff, the beyond basic strategy sessions. And the reason we create these, about 200 and some odd workshops back here now, it's so that you can come in here, type in like goals or whatever the thing is, and then it'll pull up all the workshops and all the different lessons and all the different courses that focus on goals, right? Or learning a particular skill, whether it's something, a beginner like goals or more advanced, like maybe a user ID measurement, something like that. So you have those. And then you have Ask Instructor Support. So when you come into the Ask Instructor Support, it works pretty simply. You come in, you put in your question here, put in your description of what it is, the details here. We love screenshots and videos. So a lot of members will send over that stuff and they're kind of showing the instructors like, here's what I'm dealing with. Here's what I'm trying to work through. What do I do now? And the instructors typically send back videos and screenshots. So I'm back there, Julie's back there, others are back there as well. So be sure to take advantage of that. It's kind of like having somebody that's like a consultant on call. Now, not quite real time, but typically we try to get you answers within hours, not days during normal business hours. So that's the idea of Ask an Instructor, because we know you're going to need help with this stuff. And that is the Academy, which lights up all of these things here that you see. So definitely encourage you to become a part of the Measurement Marketing Academy. If you're not yet a member, just go to measure.tips/getacademy to learn more about that program. With that, see, I made a little slide switch here. We'll go ahead and wrap this one up. This has been Getting Started, Creating a Complete Data Studio Report. Thanks again for watching this workshop, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.